Well, good evening, Little Masters, and welcome to episode 280 of the Prancing Pony Podcast, where, well, Faramir sits at the metaphorical kids' table and Denethor has words.
Go not to the steward for fatherly love, for his answer will be both no and heck no. Folks, pull up a bench in the common room and join us. I'm Matt, the Nerd of the Rings, and I'm here with the Man of the West, who has not been touched with the wisdom or sadness of the elder race, Alan Sisto.
You know, frankly, I'd just settle for a little of their legendary height, but all right. Folks, join us tonight as Faramir manages to disappoint his father once more in the second of 5 episodes on the Siege of Gondor, the 4th chapter in The Return of the King.
Folks, some of you are hearing this show for the very first time. To you, we bid a warm welcome. Here at the Prancing Pony Podcast, we are reading, talking, and often joking our way through Middle-earth a few pages at a time.
We take a deep dive into the lore, we explore how the story came to be, we talk about our favorite themes, and a lot more.
But in a lighthearted and fun way, like friends chatting at the pub. And we're glad you've joined us.
And I'm sure you'll be glad you joined as well. But before we get into even our introduction, let alone our discussion, I wanted to celebrate a little. Now, this episode releases on February 19th, 2023. Well, the very first episode of the Prancing Pony Podcast dropped on February 21st, 2016. We are celebrating the 7th anniversary of the Prancing Pony Podcast this week.
Wow.
I know. Believe me, when Sean and I started this thing, the idea is still being around 7 years later. Mind-blowing. Not a chance.
That's awesome.
It really is cool. In that time, we have released 280 full episodes, along with over 200 episode postscripts and 15 quarterly specials for our patrons. Somewhere around 550, maybe even pushing 600 hours of content. We've had more than 6 million downloads during that time, and the community around the show continues to grow so much that we actually held our own moots in 2021 and 2022. It's been fantastic. Now, this season has been a season of change, and Matt, you've been a part of that. I'm super glad you've been here. But of course, it's also been a season of opportunity as I look to create even more Tolkien content for our community. So keep your eyes open for a brand new, possibly daily project coming from me in the very near future. I don't know what I'm setting myself up for, but we're going to give it a try.
Possibly.
Yeah, possibly. That's
daily.
Right. It's possibly daily. It's also possibly whenever the heck I get around to it. Now, before we get to tonight's chapter discussion, it's time to continue my new tradition of introducing you, my listeners, to my co-hosts here at the Prancing Pony Podcast. So, Matt, we're going to ask you some questions tonight. What do you think?
All right, let's do it.
Now, for those who listened while I was working with Don Marshall, the question's going to sound familiar. I've known you for a little while now. Sean and I appeared on your show, and we met up in London at the Amazon event. But I've never asked you the question that we ask everybody who appears on the Prancing Pony Podcast. Co-hosts are no exception. When and how did you first discover Tolkien's works? What was your experience like? And what keeps you coming back?
I came to the fandom through the Peter Jackson films. I wasn't a huge reader growing up. The most I dipped my toe into the sci-fi fantasy genre was Star Wars. I was
okay.
I love Star Wars as a kid. Who doesn't love Star Wars as a kid?
Right,
Let's be honest.
As a kid, yeah.
Yeah. So I went to college around the time the films were coming out, and my roommate in college, I distinctly remember this vividly. We went to Walmart to do some shopping for our dorm room, and he grabs a copy of the Fellowship of the Ring DVD and said, "We should get this and watch this." And I said, "I don't know. It looks kind of weird. It looks kind of silly," or something very dismissive that in retrospect is kind of hilarious. So I sit down to watch it, and by the time we get to the Argonath, I knew I was hooked.
Yeah.
Because there were these immense statues that you could tell had history behind them.
Yes.
And I wanted to know the history so bad. And they're there, and then they move past them, and that's it. And I was like, what is the story there? And then the movie just ends. I did not realize it was the first of 3 movies, and I was like, what the heck? And long story short, I found out that The Two Towers was only a couple months away, went and saw that opening weekend. Immediately after getting out of the screening, went to the bookstore and bought the 4-pack of The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings and absolutely devoured them.
Yes. Woo-hoo.
And it's all been a downward spiral, I guess you could say. From there, it has just been a deeper dive, I'll say.
There you go.
That sounds much healthier, right?
It does, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. So it's all from that point on, Tolkien has been there, in good times and in bad,
Mm-hmm.
It is such a huge comfort for me, and always has been and always will be. And the fact that every time I read it, I discover something new about it.
Yes. So true.
And learn something that I didn't, every time I read through it, I notice something I didn't notice before. And it just shows the genius of Tolkien. And the fact that you can study this as if it's actual history blows my mind.
It really is that impressive, isn't it?
Yeah. It's endless fun. It's endless entertainment. And I just love everything about it.
Man, that is awesome. I love that. And yeah, I hear you completely. Well, you've obviously come a long way in your love for Tolkien, enough that you've actually created a YouTube channel called The Nerd of the Rings. Mm-hmm. Tell us a little bit about the story of The Nerd of the Rings. When did you think of this? What was your earliest vision for the channel? How did you get to where you are now? And what does the future look like?
Yeah, so I am a videographer by trade and education and everything. Okay. And I worked as a videographer in higher ed. And one day the higher up said, "You seem like a techie guy. We want you to help manage our YouTube channel. How about you learn about YouTube and make it happen?"
Yeah.
And so myself and one of my coworkers, we just went through the process of learning best practices and how to manage and build a YouTube channel. And so I had all this knowledge, and I was like, I'm a videographer. Like I could do my own channel. And when it came down to deciding, I was like, I really want to do it because I think it would be fun.
Yeah.
There was really only one true candidate realistically in my mind, and that was covering Middle Earth, because it's something that I've just spent hours upon hours reading and researching, and I just love devouring every bit of it. So it was a natural fit that I would try something Lord of the Rings related. At that time, I was a videographer at higher ed. As you can imagine, higher ed, not exactly the most lucrative area. So I filmed weddings on the side.
Oh, wow.
And, paying down student loans and stuff like that was kind of my focus, like do these weddings on the side. And so my pie in the sky dream for Nerd of the Rings was like, maybe I can build this up to where it gets monetized and I won't have to film weddings anymore.
Yeah. I'm guessing you haven't filmed a wedding in a very long time.
I have not filmed a wedding in a while, and I don't work as the videographer in higher ed. Now, Nerd of the Rings is my full-time thing, which I never in a million years would have thought would come to pass.
I hear that. Man, how long did it take you to get to that point?
So I went full-time for Nerd of the Rings last May.
Oh, okay.
So May 2022. Mm-hmm. So that would have been about 2.5 years, I guess.
Wow. That's impressively fast. I mean, I'm trying to figure out how to make this full time for me now that it's not a 2-man operation anymore. That's actually in the realm of the possible. Yeah. But I'm still not there. And we've been doing this for 7 years. That's incredible.
It's been a wild ride. I don't think that, I've been very, very blessed in the growth of my channel, and that it happened. It appears to have happened so fast, but the thing I have to point out is the very beginning was very, very slow.
Yeah.
One of the big things with YouTube, getting into the nuts and bolts of YouTube a little bit, is one of the big reasons that channels don't make it is they give up, they quit too early.
Yep.
And I was researching and had been told, you really need to give it 6 to 12 months of regular content posting and everything to know whether it's feasible or not. So I always said I was going to give it 6 months and then decide whether to keep going or not. I got to the 6 months and we adopted our youngest, our daughter, and took some weeks off, and I was just, life was busy. And I remember saying to my wife, like, I was sitting at around 5,000 subscribers, and I was like, I've been doing this for almost 9 months at that point, I think, by the time we got her home and everything. Right. And I was like, maybe it's time to stop pursuing this. Like, our life is busy. Maybe this is just one more thing that I don't need to be doing. And my wife, in her infinite wisdom, said, well, you took some time off for the adoption. Like, you should give it a little longer.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, like 2 weeks later, I release The Complete Travels of Gandalf, and it just catches. And, fast forward a couple months after that, I was at over 100,000 subscribers.
From 5,000.
From 5,000, yeah. And
in just a matter of a few weeks, yeah.
Yes, and it's kind of snowballed from there. And so, shout out to my wife. I really, Nerd of the Rings is in large part, for many reasons, but for her wisdom in telling me to try it out for a little bit longer. It is what it is today.
Well, thank you, Mrs. Nerd. We, as the Tolkien community, appreciate you deeply. What does the future look like for you? Do you have like a roadmap? Do you, what do you envision for the Nerd of the Rings as you go forward?
I mean, I obviously I want to keep doing what I've been doing, what people love about my channel, continue to grow the Nerd of the Rings community. It's such a wonderful community, and I've seen so much love of Tolkien in so many different ways. And it's just been great to see a community built around this that is built upon not just a mutual respect of Tolkien and his work, but also of each other, of fellow fans. And that's always been a bright spot to me. Like I want to be a positive force in the fandom. As far as the future, I mean, I have some ideas, like I have some things, like I just throwing out some ideas that I've had. I would love to make a fan film someday and actually do a fan film in Middle Earth.
Something along the lines of Born of Hope and
similar to that. I've had, whether we do it animated or live action is kind of, one of those considerations, when the story's formulated to try to figure out budgetary and feasibility of production, like which would be the route to take. Who knows? I mean, you and Sean have written a book, so now I almost feel like I have to write a book at some point.
Please, we haven't written a book. We have a book deal. We're still a little bit of ways from having actually said we've written a book. We've just had some people say we'd like you to write a book. That's what.
See, I think I'll just like what yours is called. What We Love About Middle Earth.
It's called Why We Love Middle Earth.
Why We Love Middle Earth. I'm just gonna make mine Why We Really Love Middle Earth.
Oh, I see. Okay. Take our sequel title right away from us.
That would be a good sequel title. You should have that in your back pocket.
We've bantered that around as a
you have? Okay, perfect. Well, I won't take it then.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Now somebody else will, though. So obviously, and this is just the 800-pound gorilla in the room. It's the way it is. You spent a lot of time in the last year talking about the Amazon adaptation, The Rings of Power. Being in that same fandom and talking about it as well, I've noticed that it has been a bit of a double-edged sword. I mean, it's brought new folks into the fandom, and for that, I'm super thankful because a lot of them have come into our community. And like your community, I've seen the same kind of thing in ours, right? It's this, it's not just the love for Tolkien, it's the respect and admiration of each other. It's the building of a community. It's really neat to see. So I'm glad that the Rings of Power exists in that context. Certainly it's been good for both your channel and the Prancing Pony Podcast, but it's also brought the trolls out of the woodwork, especially for you, because YouTube is, of course, a lot more notorious for that than, say, the podcast format.
I get my share, yeah.
Yes, you have, more than your share. You probably had your share plus some of our share. How have you dealt with the controversy and conflict, and what do you imagine the future of the Tolkien fandom will look like? Are we headed down the Star Wars road of toxicity?
So I think when it comes to the situation we find ourselves in today, there's no question it's much more visible, I think, is the thing when we look at the division that pops up in fandoms today. I don't think that it's necessarily a new development, but it is certainly more visible than it has ever been. That being said, having been to things like, you were there as well at Comic-Con, and the multitude of opportunities that I have to talk to fans in person because of Nerd of the Rings. And not to mention like in the Nerd of the Rings Discord and in the Prancing Pony Discord, these fan communities, I still feel like the vast majority of Tolkien fans are incredibly respectful, loving people.
Yes.
And no matter what, you might see in a headline meant to, I would say headlines meant to trigger emotion rather than convey information. I have not seen anything personally to convince me that the Tolkien fandom itself is toxic. And I would even stick up for the Star Wars fandom as well, because I think they get a bad rap. They are very passionate as well. Like it is one of the few fandoms that rivals the Tolkien fandom in terms of passion and debating. Yes. Now, I'm not saying that they're equally respectful. Like I've seen some Star Wars things even in person get a little out of hand. I can't help but look at discussions around things like the Rings of Power and notice the sudden appearance of what I like to call controversy tourists.
Yes, that's a great way of putting it. I think I've been calling those people anger merchants.
Well, yeah, that's another good one. Yes.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's this odd and very unfortunate phenomenon where people seem to be more preoccupied with winning some kind of battle than actually having goodwill discussions around Tolkien and especially adaptations of Tolkien's works. And so, yeah, I've seen, folks on these opposite ends of this spectrum that are just constantly fighting, trying to get everyone in the middle to be 100% on their side.
Yeah.
And it's gotten to a point where seemingly nobody values any kind of nuance. And you have to be either...
Well, you are so right.
If we're talking about Rings of Power specifically, you either have to 100% love everything about it.
Right.
No questions asked.
No questions. Exactly. Full support.
Yes. Or you have to be 100%. This is just the worst.
Yeah. There's never been a worse television show ever. And
yes, it feels like. And I think there are endless people who are so sick of feeling like this that there is no in between. And my whole prevailing theory and the what I aim with my channel is to have room for the nuanced conversations.
Yes, absolutely, 100 times.
Because I truly think that is where the majority of fandom and people, frankly, are.
Yeah.
They will look at something like Rings of Power and they will say, oh, I really like this. I don't like this. And there will be nuance. And you can have these very, very big disagreements on things.
Sure.
And without fail, I've had big disagreements and passionate disagreements about things when it comes to Tolkien's adaptations. And when I have these conversations in person, it's never a mudslinging, insulting. The term true fan gets thrown around a lot, and it's
I don't like
an automatic. It's an automatic nope.
Yeah, that is a hard no for me, man. Yeah.
But yeah, so I try to offer encouragement to folks that it may feel like you're in a lonely position because you're feeling like there's these two diametrically opposed forces that are just those people deserve each other. They don't deserve your attention.
That is a great way of putting it. Their attempt to force polarization on our community is both unwanted and unneeded. Yeah. I think you're right. I see a lot of the similar things. It's very interesting. Well, thanks for that. I really appreciate your insight. You certainly are plugged into the community of fans that are dealing with that sort of controversy. And it's good to hear from you that you have some hope for our Tolkien fandom as it goes forward.
Absolutely. I will never lose hope in the Tolkien fandom because I have seen far too much good and wonderful things in the Tolkien fandom for me to ever take anything seriously that indicates that it is anything less.
And most of these folks who do this, these controversy tourists, as you call them, they're going to move on to the next thing that causes controversy. They're not part of the Tolkien fandom really to begin with. And, and I'm not saying they're not true fans. I'm not using that phrase. That's a terrible phrase. You're absolutely right. And there are, of course, plenty of people who are lifelong Tolkien fans who are on one side or the other. But like you said, the vast majority of folks understand the benefits of some nuance. And
yes. And like I said, we can be miles apart on opinions on things.
Absolutely.
But I find, in my experience, one of the hallmarks of the Tolkien fandom that I've seen is the ability to disagree respectfully. Yeah. And I think that's, as much a part of Tolkien's legacy as any of the writings in Middle Earth. I mean, he has wonderful life lessons for those who are interested in learning from him. I mean, gosh, where would we be if Tolkien and Lewis, when they were early in their friendship, let their differences come between them?
Yeah. Well, I guess they were pretty radical differences at the time. You're right.
There were.
Well, thank you, Matt. Remind our listeners again where folks can find you and your content.
Yeah, so I'm on most social media platforms, but the main thing is, of course, YouTube. So youtube.com/nerdoftherings.
All right, easy enough.
Well, I think that's quite enough about me. I've talked long enough, so let's get to the text.
All right, sounds like a plan. I'm going to pick up a paragraph after we left off, because, of course, we can't read everything. Pippin pressed forward as they passed under the lamp beneath the gate arch, and when he saw the pale face of Faramir, he caught his breath. It was the face of one who has been assailed by a great fear or anguish, but has mastered it, and now is quiet. Proud and grave he stood for a moment as he spoke to the guard, and Pippin, gazing at him, saw how closely he resembled his brother Boromir, whom Pippin had liked from the first, admiring the great man's lordly but kindly manner. Yet suddenly for Faramir, his heart was strangely moved with a feeling that he had not known before. Here was one with an air of high nobility, such as Aragorn at times revealed. Less high, perhaps, yet also less incalculable and remote. One of the kings of men born into a later time, but touched with the wisdom and sadness of the elder race. He knew now why Baragon spoke his name with love. He was a captain that men would follow, that he would follow, even under the shadow of the black wings. "Faramir!" he cried aloud with the others. "Faramir!" And Faramir, catching his strange voice among the clamor of the men of the city, turned and looked down at him and was amazed. "Whence come you?" he said. "A halfling, and in the livery of the tower? Whence—" But with that Gandalf stepped to his side and spoke. "He came with me from the land of the halflings," he said. "He came with me. But let us not tarry here. There is much to say and to do, and you are weary. He shall come with us. Indeed he must, for if he does not forget his new duties more easily than I do, he must attend on his lord again within this hour. Come, Pippin, follow us." All right.
Now, in the part that we skipped, we see that the crowd in the city cheers for Faramir, and interestingly, Mithrandir.
I thought that was interesting, too. I like that. It's, obviously he has a history there. Denethor made that much clearer. But, it's interesting that the crowd knows who he is.
He's a man of the people, or a wizard of the people.
A wizard of the people, an Istari of the people. Pippin sees them approach, of course, and I like this. Gandalf is described as though his fire was spent or veiled. I want to talk about that a little bit. Going back to last week, of course, he had just gone out and used his, magic flashlight to drive the Nazgûl away.
Yep.
Had that conflict, right away. The Witch King's not present, right? We know that. It was some of the others. But this was, an intense moment for him. What does that look like for you? What does a Gandalf look like who's spent his fire?
Yeah, it's interesting because it's either the fire is spent or it's veiled, which I find really interesting because those seem like two very different things.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah. So veiled, I kind of see as, that's kind of a natural thing. The Maiar, the Istari, their power is naturally veiled.
Right.
But the fire was spent. I think back to, some of Tolkien's writings where he talks about, the Istari having to learn, being in mortal form.
Right. Because they are incarnate. Yeah.
Yeah. So they're, I kind of like, there's still physical limitations, I think. And so the fire being spent, he's just exerted this, you said, a magic flashlight takes some of it out of you,
Yeah, his battery's drained. Well, I mean,
Yeah.
I'm thinking back even now, this was Gandalf 1.0, but thinking back to Khazad-dûm
Yes.
when he has that encounter at the door, right? He's put the spell of on the door and then it got broken and he's just exhausted and he has to rest for a little bit. Yeah. Similar.
And then he goes on. I mean, gosh, that's the thing that I marvel at with Khazad-dûm is he goes on, like he empties the tank in that battle.
Does. Yeah, he does. Boy, big time.
So meanwhile, Faramir is simply described as dark and his head is bowed.
Mm-hmm.
And Faramir's state is echoed physically as they approach the gate, swaying, weary, or wounded.
Right. But this is when Gandalf seems to actually maybe have that fire be veiled rather than spent, right? He's walking steadily. His cloak is behind him. He's got a little bit of swagger going on. Maybe it's already starting to come back.
Maybe. Yeah, maybe he's got a quick respawn time or something.
His cooldown timer is
his
only
cooldown time. There we go. Yes. So moving into what we got to read, we stay with Pippin's perspective as Gandalf and Faramir walk through the gate.
Right.
And we should note here how perceptive Pippin is when he observes Faramir's face.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, this is something that we often joke about, right? You know, Pippin's immaturity, his silliness, his foolishness. But, lately we have seen him make some really astute observations, and this is one of those.
Yeah.
After he notices Faramir's condition and really diagnoses it quite accurately from just a glance at his face, that's when Pippin notices the familiarity to Boromir. And we're told that Pippin really liked Boromir, right? He sees him as having a lordly but kindly manner, and probably because he didn't try to take a piece of jewelry from Pippin. But, as a general rule, that is who Boromir was, yeah.
Absolutely. Then we see even more perceptiveness on Pippin's part as he feels his heart moved.
Yeah. Oh, it's beautiful.
I love that. I love this part. It says Faramir is noble, like Aragorn, but closer and more relatable.
Yeah. A little more down to earth. And again, that's just a result of, his line, right? His lineage in comparison to Aragorn. Specifically, we're told that he's like a Númenórean king, right? The kings of old, but touched with the wisdom and sadness of the elves. And I got to say, that is a deep observation for anyone to be able to make, especially Pippin.
Pippin, yeah.
I know. There you go, jabbing at him again. But certainly Frodo and Sam saw some similar characteristics in Faramir last season in The Window on the West.
Yeah, and just real quick, obviously Faramir does have a little bit of elven heritage in him. I mean, his uncle is the Prince of Dol Amroth, and we know that he had some elven blood in him as well.
That's true. I mean, it would be a very tiny amount, but yes.
But yeah, it's a touch. It's a touch. Yeah. It counts.
a drop or two, yeah.
And Pippin recognizes why Baragond and the others would follow Faramir, acknowledging that even he himself would follow him into danger.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing that quickly he feels such a pull to Faramir that he knows not only would Baragond go and do this, right, but that he himself would follow Faramir, who's a total stranger to him at this point, into danger.
Even under the shadow of the Black Wings.
I know. High risk, right?
Yeah.
So he calls out Faramir's name along with the rest of the crowd. He's caught up in that moment. And as you might imagine, Faramir notices that strange voice and is kind of looking around, head on a swivel. Yeah. Where's that coming from?
And is also quite understandably a bit shocked.
Yeah. You think?
A halfling wearing the uniform of a soldier guard.
Yeah, that's certainly not something he ever expected to see. But Gandalf notices this and comes up right away. Faramir's still asking questions, and he gives him a real short explanation. He came with me. He's with me.
He's with me, yeah. But he encourages Faramir to keep moving. We need to get to Denethor.
Right. We got some news to deliver. We got to talk about stuff, yeah.
And so does the halfling. I know his work schedule, even if he does not.
Hopefully Pippin does, but yeah, sometimes, he is still Pippin. Absolutely. Well, we will get to that fascinating meeting, that wonderful embrace of father and son. We'll get to that after the ad break. Now, before we get back to the text and Pippin's newfound duties, we want to make sure you know that even after you've listened to this episode, well, there's a lot more talk going on at the Prancing Pony Podcast.
The PPP has an amazing listener community. They're always coming up with great questions and discussions across all our social media spaces. Check out our common room on Facebook, our dedicated subreddit, Twitter, and more.
Now on Facebook, just look for the Prancing Pony Podcast. Follow the page to get the news, but be sure to join the group for some great discussions.
Or if you prefer Reddit, find us there at r/Prancing Pony Pod. On Twitter and Instagram, we're simply at Prancing Pony Pod.
And please be sure to check out the Rings of Power Wrap-Up. That's my new podcast with Sarah Brown and my most recent co-host on the PPP, James Tauber, where we discuss, analyze, and speculate all about Amazon's television adaptation of J.R.R. Tolkien's Middle-earth.
Alan, Sarah, and James take deep dives into the lore behind the show, or the lore that should be behind the show, talk about themes and characters, and interview folks involved with the show. So look for the Rings of Power Wrap-Up and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. And check out @Rings Wrap-Up on social media for more.
And folks, if you enjoy the PPP, please consider supporting the show by joining the Fellowship of the Podcast. When you do, you get a lot. An active Discord community, including live episode recordings, postscripts, episodes without digital ads, and a lot more.
Like free merch and live Discord hangouts. But you can also become part of our Questions After Nightfall episodes, or even join us as a guest in our North Wing segment. So please go to patreon.com/prancingponypod to show your support and join the Fellowship of the Podcast.
And you can also help us out by giving us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts and a rating on Spotify. And please recommend us to your friends. For now, though, let's go ahead and get back to the text. Matt, would you pick up where I left off?
So at length they came to the private chamber of the Lord of the City. There deep seats were set about a brazier of charcoal, and wine was brought. And there Pippin, hardly noticed, stood behind the chair of Denethor and felt his weariness little. So eagerly did he listen to all that was said. When Faramir had taken white bread and drunk a draught of wine, he sat upon a low chair at his father's left hand. Removed a little upon the other side sat Gandalf in a chair of carven wood. And he seemed at first to be asleep. For at the beginning Faramir spoke only of the errand upon which he had been sent out 10 days before, and he brought tidings of Ithilien and of movements of the enemy and his allies. And he told of the fight on the road when the men of Harad and their great beast were overthrown, a captain reporting to his master such matters as had often been heard before, small things of border war that now seemed useless and petty, shorn of their renown. Then suddenly Faramir looked at Pippin. "But now we come to strange matters," he said, "for this is not the first halfling that I have seen walking out of the northern legends into the southlands." At that Gandalf sat up and gripped the arms of his chair, but he said nothing, and with a look stopped the exclamation on Pippin's lips. Denethor looked at their faces and nodded his head, as though in sign that he had read much there before it was spoken. Slowly, while the others sat silent and still, Faramir told his tale, with his eyes for the most part on Gandalf, though now and again his glance strayed to Pippin, as if to refresh his memory of others that he had seen. As his story was unfolded of his meeting with Frodo and his servant, and of the events at Henneth Annwn, Pippin became aware that Gandalf's hands were trembling as they clutched the carven wood. White they seemed now, and very old, and as he looked at them, suddenly with a thrill of fear, Pippin knew that Gandalf himself, was troubled, even afraid. The air of the room was close and still. At last, when Faramir spoke of his parting with the travelers, and of their resolve to go to Cirith Ungol, his voice fell, and he shook his head and sighed.
So Gandalf, Faramir, and Pippin arrive at Denethor's private chambers. I love this. They're sitting around a fire pit drinking wine. I mean, it sounds like a really pleasant place to hang out. It
sounds like it, yeah.
Yeah.
If you weren't
there's a war
about to go to war, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Also, Pippin doesn't get to enjoy this. He's
No, he
standing
doesn't.
behind Denethor's chair, waiting on him, as it is his job to do.
Of course, of course.
But he doesn't seem to mind because he gets to listen in.
Right. I mean, he's certainly very curious, wants to know what's happening. Faramir refreshes himself a little bit and takes one chair while Gandalf takes the other.
But note carefully, Faramir is on the left side in a low chair, while Gandalf is on the other side, obviously the right side, in what is described as a chair of carven wood.
And this is yet another reflection, almost in a way, it's predicting or telling us in advance what Denethor's opinion of Faramir is, right? It's Faramir's status in his father's eyes. Gandalf is given the place of higher honor, sitting on his right hand versus his left, as well as the nicer chair. I mean, it's like he's getting one of those little kindergartner chairs.
He's at the kiddie table is basically what's happening.
Exactly.
And even Gandalf, it's like Denethor doesn't even get along with Gandalf all that well.
Denethor clearly doesn't like Gandalf all that much, right? You would replace me, blah, 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 yeah.
So going on, Gandalf rests quietly while Faramir begins to deliver news that is now, well, maybe a little less crucial.
Yeah, a little bit, yeah.
News from Ithilien about the fight with the Haradrim and their Mumuk.
Exactly. Now, he does say he'd been sent out for this errand 10 days ago. That would have been March 1st. So to give you some context with that, the day that Faramir was sent out to go to Ithilien and do this was when Frodo and Sam began the crossing of the Dead Marshes.
And also the Entmoot was continuing with Merry and Pippin while the three hunters met Gandalf the White that same day and set out for Edoras. Man,
a lot has been going on in these last 10 days, hasn't it?
It is a dead sprint in these last 10 days really for sure.
I mean, when you go back to like Fellowship and you realize it took them like a month and a half to get from Rivendell to Moria, there are times where 10 days pass in a sentence.
Yes.
And we've got 10 days passing in a book and a half. It's
and we're talking Helm's Deep. We're talking all kinds of stuff happening.
All the stuff. Exactly. Paths of the Dead, the whole 9 yards.
So picking back up with the story, Faramir looks at Pippin and talks about strange matters.
Yes.
This halfling here is not the first one that I have seen.
Well, this certainly wakes Gandalf up from his little nap, right? I mean, he gives Pippin the shut up look. I mean, you and I are both parents. I think we've given that shut up look.
Absolutely.
And kids know what it looks like. Yeah. Of course, Denethor notices this. He is incredibly perceptive and very, very smart.
And now Faramir relates his encounter with Frodo, Sam, and Gollum.
Right.
And what's interesting here is he looks mostly at Gandalf, not Denethor, which he will point out later.
Yes, he will. But he does sometimes look at Pippin, sort of like in an effort to remind himself maybe of Frodo and Sam, of the other half.
Jog his memory. Yeah.
Exactly. Physic, jog his memory. I jog him too hard. Sorry, I'm always dropping Princess Bride lines. It just happens. So Pippin notices Gandalf's hands are trembling at this point, and he realizes, and I love that phrase, with a thrill of fear, he realizes that even Gandalf himself, I love the way that's repeated, is afraid of what he is hearing.
Yeah, I love the emphasis on, this is a figure that Pippin... This is Gandalf, guys.
Yeah, like
Gandalf.
Nobody should be afraid. I mean, Gandalf should never be afraid. But if he's afraid, we all need to be afraid.
Exactly. Yeah. And it says the room feels smaller and tighter to Pippin in light of Gandalf's fear and his own. Yeah. And Faramir speaks of the end of his time with Frodo and their decision to go to Cirith Ungol.
Right.
And it's clear from Faramir's response, his falling voice, shaking head, sighing, that he did not approve of this decision.
I think you're right. That's a fair conclusion to make. Yeah, definitely.
All right, Alan, why don't we go back to the text?
That's probably a good idea. I'm going to go ahead and pick up there. Cirith Ungol, Morgul Vale, he said. The time, Faramir, the time. When did you part with them? When would they reach that accursed valley? I parted with them in the morning 2 days ago, said Faramir. It is 15 leagues thence to the Vale of the Morgul Duin, if they went straight south, and then they would be still 5 leagues westward of the accursed tower. At swiftest they could not come there before today, and maybe they have not come there yet. Indeed, I see what you fear, but the darkness is not due to their venture. It began yestereve, and all Ithilien was under shadow last night. It is clear to me that the enemy has long planned an assault on us, and its hour had already been determined before ever the travelers left my keeping. Gandalf paced the floor. The morning of 2 days ago, nigh on 3 days of journey. How far is the place where you parted? Some 25 leagues as a bird flies, answered Faramir, but I could not come more swiftly. Yestereve I lay at Cair Andros, the long isle in the river northward which we hold in defence, and horses are kept on the hither bank. As the dark drew on, I knew that haste was needed, so I rode thence with 3 others that could also be horsed. The rest of my company I sent south to strengthen the garrison at the fords of Osgiliath. I hope that I have not done ill." He looked at his father. "Ill?" cried Denethor, and his eyes flashed suddenly. "Why do you ask? The men were under your command, or do you ask for my judgment on all your deeds? Your bearing is lowly in my presence, yet it is long now since you turned from your own way at my counsel. See, you have spoken skillfully as ever, but have I not seen your eye fixed on Mithrandir, seeking whether you said well or too much? He has long had your heart in his keeping. My son, your father is old, but not yet dotard. I can see and hear, as was my wont, and little of what you have half said, or left unsaid, is now hidden from me. I know the answer to many riddles. Alas, alas for Boromir." "If what I have done displeases you, my father," said Faramir quietly, "I wish I had known your counsel before the burden of so weighty a judgment was thrust on me." "Would that have availed to change your judgment?" said Denethor. "You would still have done just so, I deem. I know you well. Ever your desire is to appear lordly and generous, as a king of old, gracious, gentle. That may well befit one of high race, if he sits in power and peace. But in desperate hours, gentleness may be repaid with death." "So be it," said Faramir. And we'll stop there.
Ooh.
Oh, Denethor.
Gets a little awkward in there, I think, for Pippin, maybe.
Thanksgiving is going to be a lot of fun, isn't it? Yeah. Get those guys at the table.
So we see Gandalf springs up at the news of Cirith Ungol and asks some very important questions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He says, "When did you leave them, and when would they reach the Morgul Vale?"
Boy, that's a big question. And obviously Faramir later understands, puts 2 and 2 together, why Gandalf is pursuing this line of questioning. So Faramir tells them they departed on the morning of March 8th. It is now, for your reference, folks, March 10th. And since it is 15 leagues, now that's 3 miles a league, so we're talking about 45 miles or about 72 kilometers from where they parted to the entrance of the valley, and then another 5 leagues, that's 15 miles or 24 kilometers, to Minas Morgul. It would have taken them until at least today. Arguably, even that's a little optimistic. I mean, that's 60 miles on foot in rough terrain. So, yeah, they do get there, though.
Yeah. And kudos for you for including the kilometers, because I do get some flack from time because I just use miles because Tolkien used miles. I figure
exactly
if it's good enough for him, it's good enough for us. But
yeah. No, I try to remember to use meters and things and kilograms when pounds are mentioned, which is not very often, but when I'm calculating things.
Yeah, when you're
like how much did the stone of Erech weigh?
Yeah, that's
when we did some calculations on. Well, was it 6 feet high sticking out of the ground because it's man high? Or was it man high
indented
in
into the ground?
6 foot?
Yeah,
right. So then we made calculations based on how much stone weighs and how big the 6 foot diameter version would be versus the 12-foot diameter one, and so
what was the final weight?
I don't remember off the top of my head.
Okay.
All I can tell you is that the 12-foot version, the one where it's 6 feet high sticking out of the ground, as opposed to 6 feet high overall, that version was prohibitively heavy, and that it would have been we're talking tons of mass, and that trying to get that over on a ship, we speculated about how many Númenórean refugees had to stay and go down with the island because they had to make room for this big rock.
Right? Oh man. I think I just caused the first digression since I've been.
Yay!
That was my first one.
Sir. It took an episode and a quarter to get here. I'm impressed.
All right. So getting back to the story at hand.
Yes.
Indeed, Frodo was at the crossroads at sunset on this very day. So he's reached the Vale, but not the tower.
Thank goodness. Now, on this point, Hammond and Skull in their Reader's Companion quote a Brian Roseberry from Tolkien, A Cultural Phenomenon. He says that the news that Faramir has given Gandalf, quote, the information about Frodo's progress necessary to guide his later strategy. His fear that Frodo may have perished or been captured in the valley of Minas Morgul, and Sauron already regained the ring, is not less moving because we already know that this fear is both well-founded and ill-founded. Frodo has indeed been captured, but the ring is in the possession of Sam, still at liberty.
Hammond and Skull also say that this news will later lead Gandalf and Aragorn to decide to attack the Morannon rather than Minas Morgul.
Right.
In order that they keep Sauron's attention away from that area.
Exactly. So, like I said earlier, Faramir has put two and two together and understands what it is that Gandalf is afraid of, right? He's thinking, oh man, is this darkness related to Frodo and the ring passing into the Morgul Vale? But Faramir's able to sort of lower those concerns by pointing out, look, the shadow began the night before when Ithilien was completely covered.
And he also says that this attack has long been planned. It's our determined. And that, of course, before Frodo, Sam, and Gollum left Henneth Annwn.
Right.
But he's both right and wrong here, isn't he?
That's correct. I mean, yes, the attack has long been planned. I mean, of course. I mean, you don't bring allies up from Far Harad if this is just random. So yes, the attack's long been planned. But as Gandalf explains later, Sauron has moved his plans up after Aragorn looked into the Palantir, and that happened on March 6th. So definitely a little bit of an acceleration to the plan.
Yeah, and we'll see that one of the great skills, and again, one of the reasons of Sauron's downfall is their ability to make him rush his plans. Exactly.
So Gandalf's still processing this news. He's kind of almost thinking out loud here. You could say, he's doing this. The morning of 2 days ago, well, that means 3 days of travel. Now, how far is the place where you separated from them? That's an important question too.
Yeah, and Faramir says that it's 25 leagues, which is 75 miles roughly, 121 kilometers, but that he could not have gotten back any more quickly, explaining that he'd been up at Caer Andros the night before.
That's right. Now, he calls it the Long Isle here, and that's about right. The name means ship of long foam, from Caer, which is ship, and we see that in different form in something like Kiryatan, who is the shipbuilder. The segment and, A-N-D, that just means long, like in Anduin, long river, or in Anfalis, long beach. And then there's Ros, which means foam, like Rauros. So the ship of long foam. And that's because, of course, the island looked a little bit like a ship with its high prow facing north. So the river Anduin, as the waters would crash into it, would foam about that prow. There's your little sidebar in Caer Andros.
And when the darkness came, Faramir knew he needed to take off, so he rode back, sending the rest of his force to strengthen the defense at Osgiliath. And it's at this point that he looks at his father and asks if he's done ill. And Denethor's response begins to reveal the tensions in this relationship between him and Faramir.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, interestingly, though, in an early draft, Denethor was kinder to Faramir. But in the War of the Ring, which is the 8th volume of the History of Middle-earth, we get to read a note that Tolkien wrote to himself. And he says this: the early conversation of Faramir and his father and motives must be altered. Denethor must be harsh. He must say he did wish Boromir had been at Henneth Annwn, for he would have been loyal to his father and brought him the ring. Gandalf may correct this. I love that. Like Tolkien's writing to himself. Of course, Gandalf will correct this. Because that's what Gandalf does. So going back to this note, Tolkien says, Faramir grieved but patient. Then Denethor must be all for holding Osgiliath like Boromir did, while Faramir and Gandalf are against it, using the arguments previously given to Denethor. At length in submission but proudly, to please his father and show him that not only Boromir was brave, he accepts the command at Osgiliath. Men in the city do not like it. This will not only be truer to previous situation, but will explain Denethor's breaking up when Faramir is brought back dying, as it seems.
Yeah, it's really interesting that Tolkien originally had this as a kinder conversation, because that's such a central part of Denethor's character that we see in the final book.
It really is. I mean, that pride and that sort of almost latent anger that's there. We see a lot of that in the final version of the text, but in the earlier versions, he was not anywhere near as brutal. I mean, there's a moment later on where we read in tonight's episode where he says, I noticed that you're tired. In the early draft, he actually says, I see that you're tired, my son. And here it's more like he just doesn't even say
what's
that.
wrong with you? You're tired.
Right.
Why are you tired?
I see you're tired. Let's go. Yeah. Brutal stuff.
So back to the text, Denethor begins to build up his case for Faramir being a wizard's pupil here.
Yeah.
He accuses him of not taking Denethor's advice despite a pretense of humility, and pointing out that he noticed how Faramir looked at Gandalf to see if what he was saying was okay.
And then he pulls out the line about being old but not dotard, meaning somebody whose age has made them physically or mentally weak. And he basically says, look, I've figured out nearly all of what you've hinted at or even what you've avoided altogether. And frankly, it looks like he's pieced this mystery together, doesn't it?
Yeah, Sherlock Denethor here has figured it out.
Sherlock Denethor.
And when he laments Boromir, Faramir expresses his desire to have known his father's will before he was put in the situation to make that choice.
Right.
And Denethor turns around and asks if that would have resulted in a different choice.
That is an interesting question, isn't it? I mean, Faramir is saying, look, I wish I'd known your will before I had to make that call. But do you really think that even if he had known that he would have still, that he would have changed his mind and taken the ring from Frodo? What do you think?
Yeah, it reminds me of something we're going to see later on with Baragond, actually. And it's, he knows, Baragond in that situation, knows what is expected of him, but he makes the right choice anyway.
Morally right.
The morally right choice that we see pop up in Tolkien a lot is, it might not be the choice that's expected of you or commanded of you, but it is the morally right one.
Yeah.
I like to think Faramir would still make that same choice.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. In fact, I think actually knowing his father's will explicitly would have just made his decision harder. I mean, it would have made it even harder for him to do this. And it was already, I'm sure a difficult thing.
Depending on the self-awareness, there, maybe it'd make it easier to say like, true. Oh, dad thinks this. What does that guy know? Yeah.
Exactly. Then I know the right answer for sure is to let you take it and leave. Denethor makes an interesting accusation here, though, by the way. He says, Faramir wants to come across as a kind and gentle leader, right? Lordly and generous. But he points out that sort of leader really only works in a time of peace, that, in a time of war, it's a whole nother story. That sort of gentleness gets death at a time like this. And Faramir assents, so be it.
Wow.
And that's where we're going to have you pick up with so be it.
So be it, cried Denethor. But not with your death only, Lord Faramir. With the death also of your father and of all your people, whom it is your part to protect now that Boromir is gone. Do you wish, then, said Faramir, that our places had been exchanged? Yes, I wish that indeed, said Denethor. For Boromir was loyal to me, and no wizard's pupil. He would have remembered his father's need, and would not have squandered what fortune gave. He would have brought me a mighty gift. For a moment, Faramir's restraint gave way. I would ask you, my father, to remember why it is that I, not he, was in Ithilien. On one occasion at least your counsel has prevailed, not long ago. It was the lord of the city that gave the errand to him. Stir not the bitterness in the cup that I mixed for myself, said Denethor. Have I not tasted it now many nights upon my tongue, foreboding that worse yet lay in the dregs? As now indeed I find, would it were not so. Would that this thing had come to me. Comfort yourself, said Gandalf. In no case would Boromir have brought it to you. He is dead and died well. May he sleep in peace. Yet you deceive yourself. He would have stretched out his hand to this thing, and taking it he would have fallen. He would have kept it for his own, and when he returned you would not have known your son. The face of Denethor set hard and cold. You found Boromir less apt to your hand, did you not? He said softly. But I, who was his father, say that he would have brought it to me. You are wise, maybe, Mithrandir, yet with all your subtleties you have not all wisdom. Counsels may be found that are neither the webs of wizards nor the haste of fools. I have in this matter more lore and wisdom than you deem.
All right. Wow. First of all, that was great. I love your Denethor. So let's go back to the beginning of that passage. In response to Faramir sort of accepting that his desire to be like a king of old could lead, in fact, to his death, Denethor makes the point, dude, it's not just you. It would be me. Oh, and the rest of your people, and it's your job to protect them now that Boromir is gone, which might be a bit of a stretch. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, obviously Denethor thinks very highly of Boromir.
Yeah, that's clear.
And is definitely in this moment, I think, putting salt in the wound.
Yeah.
I think we see, Denethor kind of forgets that Faramir is also reeling from that loss.
Yeah. Faramir lost his brother. Right.
Yeah.
It feels like it's manipulative. It feels like Denethor is, well, and I think we'll know this as we get into next week when Denethor sends Faramir off to Osgiliath. This feels like he's just sort of laying the groundwork to make him feel guilty. Mm-hmm. Right? To make him feel responsible for things what do you mean it's his job to protect them now? No, Denethor, that's your job, right? You're the steward. I mean, yeah, okay, Faramir may be your last best general, but it's still your job. You're the steward. So it just feels to me kind of shallowly manipulative. But, we'll see. He gets better at this manipulation stuff in the next the next part of the chapter. And
as we'll see in the future as well, Denethor is definitely a strong strategical mind, not necessarily the most compassionate mind. No, that's true. You would definitely think that he's better at deciding maybe what to do militarily, not so much what to do as a father. Yes. And we also get Faramir asking a question that no one should ever have to ask. And seriously, yeah. Really, you don't want to hear the answer if you're Faramir, so don't ask it in the first place. But he does anyway. He does. Yeah. He says, "Do you wish our places had been exchanged?" Which is such a gut punch. And it's followed up by an even bigger gut punch. What is perhaps the most cutting piece of dialogue in the entire book? "Yes, I wish that indeed." Ow. Just ow. Denethor wishing that his living son were dead, if it would only mean that his dead son would then be alive. You and I are both fathers, right? We both have kids. I can't even fathom that. No, not my wildest nightmares could I imagine those words coming out of my mouth, or even that thought entering my head. Exactly. I can't even imagine, of course, the terrible loss of losing one of my children. Oh, right. But to then say to the living one, I wish your places were changed. Like what? Oh my goodness. Yeah. Wow. Just beyond brutal. It's there's a lot to unpack in the psychology of Denethor, I think, when it comes to, worldview and, Yeah, his parenting style, he must have been relying on his late wife to do most of the actual parenting, I would say. And that wasn't even very, very long. They were quite young when their mother passed away. Yeah. Yeah. Finduilas, the sister, by the way, of Imrahil, Prince of Dol Amroth. Yes. So, yeah, really just gutting. Putting myself in Faramir's place there. It's tricky because I don't have any siblings, so I can't quite grasp that dynamic. Well, and see, I'm the oldest sibling, so I'm already the favorite. So of course you are. So you are Boromir in this. Yeah, you can't. Wow. And if your brothers and sisters are listening to this, they're not coming to Thanksgiving, man. I hope they don't listen to the PPP. They're the only people in the world, I hope, aren't listening to the PPP. For your sake, Matt. I'll know if my phone blows up. I'll be like, "Oh, we just had episode 280 just released. All right." Well, then to make it worse, Denethor here gives reasons why he wishes Faramir was dead. Exactly. He says Boromir was loyal to me, not to Gandalf. Right. And that he would remember what Denethor needed and would have brought him a mighty gift. A mighty gift. Which is better than a mighty gif. I mean, those are entertaining and all, but really they're not of a lot of use against Sauron. I'm surprised that we haven't gotten an actual gif from that point in the movies, actually. You're right. He would have brought me a mighty gif. Yeah, we have it is a gif of Boromir. Ooh, a mighty gif. I guess we've got some work to do. I think we just stumbled upon a hole in the Lord of the Rings GIF game out there. Yeah. Well, fortunately, we have a little time between recording this and releasing this to, enroll some folks to help us create that GIF. Yeah. Yes. So
In the meantime, not playing the gift game, Faramir actually has his restraint give way, which I have to say, for a dude who is so under control, this is the most under control that somebody whose restraint gave way could ever be. He doesn't get mad. He doesn't lay into him. This is very spot on, despite this restraint gave way.
Yeah. If it were my restraint giving away, it would be much. There would be more exclamation points, I think, to what I was saying.
There might even be some physical violence.
There might be. I don't know. I'm a pretty chill guy, but Faramir makes me look like a raging lunatic by comparison.
That's true. Faramir is very even keeled. Yeah. Unshakable.
But, I mean, sometimes that's almost even more cutting to the person that's, that this is being pointed out to, the fact that you can calmly and just speak truth the way Faramir does.
Yeah. I'm not the one who sent me. I'm not the one who sent Boromir there. Don't you remember?
Right. Yeah. He said, he's the one that gave Boromir that errand to go to Imladris and not Faramir, even though Faramir was the one who had the dream first.
That's right.
And more often.
That's right. So Faramir talked about this with Frodo and Sam last season. And yes, I'm pulling this passage again because yes, it is one of my favorite passages ever. He says, "What in truth this thing is, I cannot yet guess. But some heirloom of power and peril it must be. A fell weapon, perchance, devised by the Dark Lord. If it were a thing that gave advantage in battle, I can well believe that Boromir, the proud and fearless, often rash, ever anxious for the victory of Minas Tirith and his own glory therein, might desire such a thing and be allured by it. Alas, that ever he went on that errand. I should have been chosen by my father and the elders, but he put himself forward, as being the older and the hardier, both true, and he would not be stayed. But fear no more. I would not take this thing if it lay by the highway. Not were Minas Tirith falling in ruin, and I alone could save her so, using the weapon of the Dark Lord for her good and my glory." Yeah, I could have stopped after, "and he would not be stayed," but you think I'm going to not read that line if it's right there in front of me? Yeah.
Absolutely not. You have
That's like one of the best bits of monologue in the whole story.
Absolutely. Yeah. If it were sitting by the interstate there, he says no.
I'm looking at it. It's on the side of the road. I could pick it up. It doesn't belong to anybody. Oh, and by the way, Minas Tirith is falling, and the only way that I can save it is if I pick up this ring and use it. Nope, still not going to happen.
Yeah. And accurate or not, it certainly wasn't aimed to comfort Denethor.
Oh, yes.
Faramir's response here. Yeah. And Denethor in response goes full woe is me on Faramir.
He sure does, doesn't he? Oh, man.
Pulls out lines like, "Stir not the bitterness," and "worse yet lay in the dregs."
I just want to break out the world's tiniest violin for him right now.
Right, yeah. And, he expresses this wish that things wouldn't be the way they are and that this thing would have come to him.
Yeah. And that gives Gandalf a chance to correct Denethor, like we talked about earlier. Tolkien mentioned in that note that in the War of the Ring that Gandalf can correct him, right? Denethor has to be harsher, but Gandalf can, fix the facts here. And Gandalf points out Boromir would never have brought this thing back to you, not in a million years.
Yeah, that's right, because he himself would have taken it, fallen, and kept it for himself.
Absolutely.
And Gandalf even goes a step further. He says, in fact, when Boromir came back, you would not even have known him.
Oh, yeah. And certainly that is almost absolutely the thing that would have happened.
Yeah,
Boromir would have become somebody totally different from the Boromir that we all knew. And yeah, the ring just corrupts. It absolutely does. Especially, remember the ring, as we read, I think in one of the letters, Tolkien talks about how it has an influence based on how you obtained it. Right. So somebody like Gollum, who obtained it through an act of murder, is going to be corrupted more by it than, say, Bilbo, who just picked it up and found it, or Frodo, who was given it. So Boromir, if he had in fact taken the ring from Frodo, would have absolutely become corrupted very quickly indeed.
Absolutely. Yeah, I actually was just researching this a bit for a video on Gandalf and how he comes to discover that it is the One Ring, and why, some folks, because of the movies, kind of think that he should have figured it out much earlier. So I went into that research a bit, but that's the whole reason that Bilbo is not a completely wretched and wrecked creature, because he started his possession of the ring in an act of pity, in
I'm so glad you said that. The act of pity. That's exactly what it was. Yep.
Yeah, sparing Gollum's life. So yeah, obviously, if Boromir, on the flip side, like you said, if you would have taken this by force, not a great way to start. And no question, by the time he makes it down to Minas Tirith, the guy's going to be going off the deep end.
Totally unrecognizable.
Yeah.
Now, fortunately, of course, he didn't. And Gandalf is able to comfort Denethor with the fact that Boromir died well. We've talked about this before. I even wrote a Prancing Pony pondering on this. The whole idea that Boromir won a victory that day. Gandalf makes that clear. Aragorn even makes that clear. And it's sometimes a little hard for us to swallow, especially because a lot of us, we think of movie Boromir and how he seems to be coveting the ring from very early on. That's not quite how it works in the books. And certainly he died well, defending Merry and Pippin, slaying at least 20 orcs.
Yeah, and Denethor, after Gandalf points this out, agrees to disagree. No surprise there. He suggests that Gandalf found Boromir harder to influence than Faramir.
And then he accuses Gandalf of lacking wisdom, and he claims to have more knowledge and wisdom than Gandalf thinks he has. And he does actually have more knowledge, thanks to the Palantir off stage.
Yeah, and in the part that we skipped, we see that Gandalf calls his bluff. Okay, what's your wisdom then? And Denethor lays out his logic here. Avoid the two big errors, using the ring or sending it to Mordor with a hobbit.
Yeah, I like that that's one of the two big errors, right?
Yes.
You can use the ring, or if you're just as foolish, you can give it to a hobbit to go to Mordor with it.
You can do exactly what Gandalf did.
Yeah, exactly. So, he responds to Gandalf's question that he wouldn't have done either of those things, right? I would have avoided those two idiotic extremes. I wouldn't have used it, but I wouldn't have given it to a hobbit to go into Mordor. Instead, he would have kept it hidden, not to be used. And I love this line. I wish we could have read the whole section, but we can't read everything unless at the uttermost end of need.
Yeah.
And
so even then he's leaving the possibility open.
It could still be used, just only at the uttermost end of need, which is a lovely subjective phrase. There are times where, I don't know, maybe I'm out of a few things from the grocery store and I don't have time to go. That feels to me like the uttermost end of need. Should I use the ring? I don't think so. But he does say, of course, look, I would put it beyond the reach of Sauron, so far beyond his reach that unless his victory was super crushing, we'd all be dead anyway before he gets to it.
And this is where Gandalf makes a point that he touched on earlier. Denethor is only thinking of Gondor here.
Exactly. Sure. Go ahead and put it in, some vault high up in your tower. But
So let's say, if the ring was put someplace deep in the Citadel and the only way for Sauron to ever take it would be to destroy everyone in Gondor or at least Minas Tirith.
Well, right.
And apparently this is fine by Denethor because, hey, we're all dead anyway, so who cares?
Okay.
But then Gandalf argues here, there are other men and other lives and time still to be.
Exactly. And I have to tell you, this reminds me of a moment in the first chapter of this book. Shortly after Gandalf and Pippin arrive at the Citadel, Gandalf explains sort of his broader view and broader responsibility, and he says, "But all worthy things that are in peril as the world now stands, those are my care. And for my part, I shall not wholly fail of my task, though Gondor should perish. If anything passes through this night that can still grow fair, or bear fruit and flower again in days to come."
And of course, having a narrow view like Denethor does lead to some poor decision making.
Yes, it does.
Thankfully, what to do with the ring was never a decision of his to make.
Ooh, that is a good thing. Yeah. Glad for that.
And also, it's another interesting point here is Gandalf says he even pities Sauron's slaves.
I thought that was an interesting line. I wonder who he's talking about here, right? Is he talking about literal slaves, like maybe some of the humans that are unwillingly having to serve him? Or is he actually maybe talking about orcs and trolls and things like that?
Obviously, the first thing that came to my mind, I say obviously, maybe it's not that obvious, but the first thing that came to my mind is, the other human people. Like
that's who I think it is.
Like the folks from Rhûn and Harad.
The descendants of Arondir and Bronwyn, perhaps.
Oh my goodness. Are we doing that on here?
No, we're not. I'm just playing. Playing.
Yeah. So
people.
So
humans.
the humans who, fall under his sway for one, we're not really told exactly, the circumstances of all these people. So some of these could be slaves. I would imagine there's deception involved to some degree with nearly all of them. But yeah, so that's my first inclination.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What about you?
Yeah, I think so. I was wondering, is he talking about orcs and trolls and things like that? But then you look at how Gandalf acts in regards to orcs and trolls throughout the rest of the book, and you realize, no, he's not talking about them. He's clearly talking about slaves that are still children of Iluvatar. So in this case, humans, presumably any dwarves that might be as slaves, but we don't know that any of those exist. But yeah, I think that would be the only qualifier for Gandalf here. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, with that, let's get back to the text, Alan.
All right. And I think this is the last passage for this evening. "And where will other men look for help if Gondor falls?" answered Denethor. "If I had this thing now in the deep vaults of this citadel, we should not then shake with dread under this gloom, fearing the worst, and our counsels would be undisturbed. If you do not trust me to endure the test, you do not know me yet." "Nonetheless, I do not trust you," said Gandalf. "Had I done so, I could have sent this thing hither to your keeping, and spared myself and others much anguish. And now, hearing you speak, I trust you less, no more than Boromir. Nay, stay your wrath. I do not trust myself in this, and I refuse this thing, even as a freely given gift. You are strong, and can still in some matters govern yourself, Denethor. Yet if you had received this thing, it would have overthrown you. Were it buried beneath the roots of Mindalluin, still it would burn your mind away as the darkness grows, and the yet worse things follow that soon shall come upon us." For a moment, the eyes of Denethor glowed again as he faced Gandalf, and Pippin felt once more the strain between their wills. But now, almost it seemed as if their glances were like blades from eye to eye, flickering as they fenced. Pippin trembled, fearing some dreadful stroke. But suddenly, Denethor relaxed and grew cold again. He shrugged his shoulders. If you had, he said. "Such words and ifs are vain. It has gone into the shadow, and only time will show what doom awaits it and us. The time will not be long. In what is left, let all who fight the enemy in their fashion be at one, and keep hope while they may, and after hope still the hardihood to die free." He turned to Faramir. "What think you of the garrison at Osgiliath?" "It is not strong," said Faramir. "I have sent the company of Ithilien to strengthen it, as I have said." "Not enough, I deem," said Denethor. "It is there that the first blow will fall. They will have need of some stout captain there." "There and elsewhere in many places," said Faramir, and sighed. "Alas for my brother, whom I too loved." He rose. "May I have your leave, father?" And then he swayed and leaned upon his father's chair. "You are weary, I see," said Denethor. "You have ridden fast and far, and under shadows of evil in the air, I am told." "Let us not speak of that," said Faramir. "Then we will not," said Denethor. "Go now and rest as you may. Tomorrow's need will be sterner." Ooh, okay.
Now, going back to the beginning here, Denethor again comes in with the narrow view, assuming everyone looks to Gondor and only Gondor for help.
Exactly. And this overinflated sense of value was even a problem for Boromir back at the Council of Elrond. Denethor goes on to argue then, I think rather unpersuasively, that we wouldn't be in fear right now if we had the ring in the vaults of the Citadel somewhere. I don't see how that solves the problem, frankly.
Right, yeah. And he also makes the claim that he could resist the temptation of the ring. Trust me to endure the test.
Oh, sure.
But, I mean, based on if previous lines weren't any indication, we already know he succumbed to the temptation to use the Palantir. Yeah. So how in the world does he think he'd fight the temptation of the ring?
Exactly. And note that in this conversation, he's using a lot of first-person words. If I had this thing, Boromir would have brought it to me. Would that this thing had come to me. This isn't somebody who thinks Gondor should have the ring. The plural we is never mentioned. Again, if I had this thing, we should not then shake. So it's not as though he suddenly forgot that collective pronoun.
Right.
He just doesn't want to apply it to possession of the ring.
Absolutely. And Gandalf flat out says, I don't trust you any further than I could throw you.
Well, with your bad knee, Gandalf, you shouldn't throw anybody. Little Ferris Bueller's Day Off reference, if anybody caught that one. Yeah.
And he points out that he could have made this whole thing easier by sending it to Denethor from the very beginning if he had trusted him.
It's a pretty big if. Yeah.
But he doesn't.
No.
But now, and especially after hearing his thoughts on this, Gandalf trusts him even less than before.
Yeah, I wouldn't have trusted you before, but now I really don't trust you. I mean, no chance. But I love this. He cuts Denethor off before the steward can even make his opinion. He said, no, don't get angry. Just relax. I don't even trust myself, he says, right? I don't trust myself. And I was offered this thing totally freely. And he reminds Denethor of what we all know because we've been reading this book for so long. Getting this thing, possessing this thing, even if you locked it in the vaults down below, it would have absolutely destroyed Denethor from within.
Yeah.
Especially as Sauron approached, right? I mean, it's one thing to be sitting at the bottom of Bilbo's chest in the Shire or in his pocket.
Far away. Yeah.
Far away from the influence of Sauron. But here, this close to Mordor as Sauron is attacking? Oh, no
chance. No chance. It's interesting here. We get a switch back to Pippin's perspective. Yeah. And in order to observe the tension between these two. And we see phrases like the strain between their wills and glances like blades.
Exactly. And it's clearly meant to call back to their initial encounter. Again, going back to the chapter of Minas Tirith, the first chapter. There we read that Pippin felt the strain between them, almost as if he saw a line of smoldering fire drawn from eye to eye that might suddenly burst into flame. I mean, it's nearly verbatim, except now instead of a line of smoldering fire, it's like blades.
Yeah. And Denethor then backs down by changing the subject and kind of calls out the fact that they're using ifs and buts, and all of this is hypothetical discussion and pointless.
Right, exactly. I mean, fact is, I don't have it. I can't have it. There's nothing I can do to change that. This thing is headed into Mordor.
It's kind of rich coming from the guy who was just chewing out Faramir over hypothetical situations. Yeah.
I know, exactly. Good call. I mean, laying into Faramir about hypotheticals, but these are just hypotheticals, ifs and buts. Yeah. So, of course, then Denethor shifts the topic to operational matters, and he asks Faramir for his analysis of the defense of Osgiliath. Matt, what did he have to tell him?
And Faramir says it's not strong, even with his company of rangers and Ithilien having been sent there when he left Caer Andros.
Yeah, exactly. It's just not going to be strong enough, no.
Yeah. And Denethor rightly believes it's where the first attack will happen and that a strong leader will be needed there. Yeah. And that is clearly a setup for tomorrow's pressure.
Oh, yes, it is. Faramir agrees. And then, we touched on this earlier. Faramir's hurting from the loss of Boromir too. Mm-hmm. And here we see that. He laments the loss of Boromir and out of just utter exhaustion asks to be allowed to leave. Denethor notices he's tired and tells him to go and rest.
Yeah, and I will say I'm not 100% sure if actual Denethor was as compassionate as your voice indicated on that.
Yeah, I know.
I was like, sure how to play I think your natural compassion came through a little bit. I was like, it made me wonder though, like, is there an ounce of compassion in that, or is it?
In the earlier draft, he says, "I see you are weary, my son."
Yes.
And other than that, it's virtually the same. But that's one of those things that Tolkien changed because he did want him to be harsher.
Yes.
So maybe I
forgot about that. That is a great point. I forgot about the "my son" original line that Tolkien cut out. So long story short, we know Denethor does not have a lot of compassion. But
no, he has compassion that lasts about 5 or 6 seconds and get out.
So he says tomorrow will be even harder than today.
Yeah, and he's not wrong.
Today was pretty hard. So
it was really hard.
That's saying quite a bit. And we also see that Faramir doesn't want to talk about the Nazgûl just yet.
We don't talk about Nazgûl, no. My daughter watches that far too often, so I can't get rid of that song. So not only did Faramir ride fast and far under shadows of evil in the air, I understand he also encountered a terrifyingly slow barkeep with a large bag on his way up to the Citadel. Matt, what does Bartleman have in the bag for us tonight?
Marcus F. asks, who or what is taking up residence in Dol Guldur during the events of the War of the Ring to be creating the darkness Galadriel is pushing back? Sauron's in Mordor, and the ring wraiths are abroad looking for the ring. Is it just leftover nastiness from when it had been inhabited by Sauron? Or is a different unnamed lieutenant of Sauron changing the linens for when one/some of the ring wraiths return?
Oh, man.
As I recall, there's a passage somewhere in Unfinished Tales that says Khamûl used that as his base, just as the Witch King used Minas Morgul.
Oh, man, that is a good question, Marcus, even if we don't have a firm answer. Yeah, that's not an Airbnb I want to check out. That's what they're doing, though. I think they're using it as an investment property with nobody there. They're just renting it out to short-termers, executive residence, 30-day leases. Okay, no, I don't think we're doing that either. To get a glance, though, at Dol Guldur, let's go ahead and go back to Unfinished Tales, where we learn in a footnote to the section called The Disaster of the Gladden Fields that the hill was once called Amon Lank, meaning naked hill. And no, that doesn't mean people ran around it while naked. It's just a naked hill. It was the highest point in that southwest corner of the Greenwood. Tolkien explains that it was called Naked Hill because trees didn't grow on the summit. It was apparently where Orifur's Sylvan elves once dwelled, but they left there and ended up going north to the mountains of Mirkwood, which were known then just as the Dark Mountains.
So there's a bit of history of the place. It became Dol Guldur sometime after the Third Age 1000, when the shadow fell upon Greenwood and it was called Mirkwood. We know that the White Council feared that the necromancer might be Sauron himself, so in 2063, Gandalf goes to Dol Guldur, but the necromancer flees. Right. According to the Tale of Years, he returned in 2460, around the time that Smeagol finds the One Ring in the River Anduin.
Right.
It wasn't until 2850, when Gandalf once again enters Dol Guldur searching for Thrain, that he was able to confirm that the necromancer was Sauron.
Exactly. But it took nearly another 100 years after that for the White Council to actually do anything about it. They finally attacked in 2941, causing Sauron to flee eventually to Mordor. Now, when he set up shop there, as Marcus recalls in his question quite accurately, he sent Khamûl, who was the only named Nazgûl, and two others back to Dol Guldur to keep the place tidy, or evil, or something like that. But we know that all the Nazgûl are out and about looking for the ring as the War of the Ring approaches. Or by this point in the story, for instance, they're just flat out preparing for war. And Sauron is, of course, in Barad-dûr. So who is in Dol Guldur?
Someone who at least thinks they have a shot of defeating Galadriel?
Yeah, good luck with that.
I doubt it.
That's all I can say.
Good luck.
Yeah.
The Tale of Years tells us that 3 times Lorien had been assailed from Dol Guldur. But besides the valor of the elven people of that land, the power that dwelt there was too great for any to overcome unless Sauron had come there himself.
Right.
So it wasn't Sauron off on some sneaky mission, and it wasn't the Nazgûl. Maybe some powerful orcs?
It's kind of the only thing I can think of. I mean, Sauron had a lot of servants, and some of them would have been maybe of the level of a Mouth of Sauron type of person, right? Somebody, a human servant who is loyal, utterly loyal, like the Mouth is. It's the only thing I can think of other than orcs. Orcs aren't very bright, so I don't know that they would have. I think they would have known better than to try to attack Galadriel, whereas some, power-hungry Black Númenórean perhaps might have thought that he might have a chance if he sends his orcs against Lorien, but
yeah, and I mean these it could just be a coordinated attack. We know, obviously, even though the battle happening in Gondor is kind of the main show in this book, we obviously know that Sauron is orchestrating other things like the war in the north. So I don't know. I've always kind of interpreted this as just, darkness coming from Dol Guldur is dark forces, not necessarily wizardry or Sauron's shadow or some magical presence. It could just be old fashioned armies of orcs that are attacking.
Like you said, Sauron is coordinating these assaults somehow. We don't know how he's communicating, across such vast distances. We don't know if perhaps they were given a date and said attack on this date. I mean, we know that the attack on Minas Tirith is coming a little earlier than planned, but probably not a whole lot earlier, maybe just a few days, really. And so, because again, how quickly can you ramp something like that up? Either the forces are prepared or they're not.
Right.
So, if it's a few days earlier, then it makes sense that up in the north, we're starting to see these attacks. But we don't have a lot of details. I'm sorry to say that, Marcus, but it's a good question. I just tend to think, like Matt said, it's just evil that's still there under the command of some lieutenant of some kind. Just clearly not a Nazgûl, but there's got to be a tier of power lying somewhere between Nazgûl and Orc.
Yes. So. I wouldn't be surprised. And honestly, this is part of, I think, the fun of Middle Earth is that like there's these gaps and these holes and bigger mysteries than this, but even these smaller mysteries like this bring about some great, theorizing and conversation.
Exactly. They really do. Yeah.
Do we still have time for one more, Alan?
I think we do. It might end up running long, but I don't think people are going to complain. Mark M. writes, in episode 124, you established that Sauron either physically possesses the 9 rings or they are retained by the Nazgûl but completely bound to the Dark Lord. At the end of the story, Sauron is immortal but powerless. He remains a dark spirit gnawing itself in the wilderness. Since Sauron continues to exist, it seems the 9 would also continue to exist at some endlessly reduced level, especially since their rings were not physically destroyed. Would the 9 escape the gift of Ilúvatar? Matt, what do you think?
Well, let's look first at the ending of The Witch King, as that should give us some clue.
Yeah.
After Merry and Éowyn team up for the kill, we read that a cry went up into the shuddering air and faded to a shrill wailing, passing with the wind. A voice, bodiless and thin, that died and was swallowed up and was never heard again in that age of this world. Not especially conclusive either way, but what about other ages maybe? I suppose there's no clear answer on this one, Alan?
I don't think there really is. I mean, I like to think when it says a voice bodiless and thin that died and was swallowed up. Okay, I think it's dead, but then we get the never heard again in that age. So what about other ages, like you said? Well, let's take a look at some more evidence. When Frodo puts on the One Ring in the Samath Naur, deep in the heart of Sauron's realm, it sets off major alarm bells. In fact, we read that Sauron literally forgets his army's slaves and captains. Here's what the text tells us. The whole mind and purpose of the power that wielded them was now bent with overwhelming force upon the mountain. At his summons, wheeling with a rending cry, in a last desperate race, there flew, faster than the winds, the Nazgûl, the ring wraiths, and with a storm of wings they hurtled southwards to Mount Doom. Later, we then read of the eruption of Mount Doom. Fire belched from its riven summit. The skies burst into thunder, seared with lightning. Down like lashing whips fell a torrent of black rain, and into the heart of the storm, with a cry that pierced all other sounds, tearing the clouds asunder, the Nazgûl came, shooting like flaming bolts. As caught in the fiery ruin of hill and sky, they crackled, withered, and went out. The Nazgûl crackled, withered, and went out. It's sort of inconclusive, but I think they died once and for all. Here's the way I think about it. We know that when the One Ring was destroyed, all the other rings lost their power, even the 3, right? Even though they had never been touched or sullied by Sauron, they still lost their power. Well, that means the 9 would have also lost their power. So any enchantment over the formerly men that are now Nazgûl that Sauron would have had through the rings, those enchantments would have been ended. That means I think they would have just become houseless spirits and as such summoned to the halls and then released beyond Arda to wherever the spirits of men are destined to go. Well, then we get into the question of, can the spirits of men deny the summons the way we know that spirits of elves can? But we don't know that.
Yeah, we don't know. Again, another mystery that Tolkien leaves for us is what happens to the men of Middle Earth when they die. But I think you're right on here, Alan, because like you said, the rings lose their power. Even the 3 lose their power when the 1 is destroyed. And we know that it is through their 9 rings. That's what makes the Nazgûl, what turns them into these wraiths. So yeah, I think their history once that ring is destroyed.
Yeah, I do too. I actually tend to think, by the way, and this is just personal opinion, I don't think men can refuse the summons the way elves can, and it has to do with their nature.
Yeah.
Elves are tied to Arda. Their Fëanor will always remain in Arda.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, they might bounce between the halls of Mandos and then getting rehoused and coming back into either Valinor or Middle-earth, but they will always be in Arda until the end of Arda itself. On the other hand, when men's bodies die, their Fëanor go somewhere else outside of Arda. So I don't think that they can refuse the summons. And I want to back that up with one other thing I was thinking about, which is the Oathbreakers, right? We just recently dealt with them in the Paths of the Dead. They were only able to stay because of an intervention by Ilúvatar due to the broken oath.
Right. Yeah.
Their nature would have been to escape, and you could tell they were craving that. When can we be released from this thing? And it took intervention by Ilúvatar to keep them here, just like it took intervention by Sauron through the rings to keep the Nazgûl here.
Yeah. Now
that he's gone, and now that the rings have lost their power, poof. That's my thought is poof. I know that's very sophisticated.
That's very deep. That is very deep. We should get that on a t-shirt.
Maybe that should be our title of the episode. Poof. All right. Well, folks, that does wrap it up for another episode of the Prancing Pony Podcast. But be sure to join us again next week when Gandalf allows Pippin only one butt.
Fortunately, he only has one.
Don't we all?
Folks, Alan and I want to thank the members of Team PPP, editor Jordan Rennells, Barlaman Becca Davis, social media manager Casey Hilsey, event and Patreon community coordinator Katie McKenna, graphic artist Megan Collins, and website guru Phil Dean.
And speaking of the website, please be sure to visit us there at theprancingponypodcast.com. We've got show notes, hilarious outtakes, Prancing Pony ponderings, and our online storefront where you can get all sorts of PPP merch.
You'll also want to visit our library page. The Prancing Pony Podcast is first and foremost a podcast about the books. So if you're interested in a book we've mentioned on the show, you'll find a link for it in our library. The PPP gets a small amount of compensation when you make your purchase, and we thank you for that.
We also want to thank our patrons at the Kierdan's contribution tier. I'll start with DeMay in Alaska, James in Virginia, Tamsin in Minnesota, Chad in Texas, Lance in New Jersey, Paul in Colorado, Jerry in Texas, B in California, Joseph in Texas, Kathy from North Carolina, Lori from Washington, Carlos in California, Brian in the UK, Ned from Connecticut, Jerry from Washington, Joe in Washington, and Erwin from the Netherlands.
There's also Dylan in Australia, Ben in Minnesota, Anthony in Texas, Karen in the UK, Zaksu in Illinois, Brian in Texas, Sarah in New Jersey, June in Ireland, Joshua in Massachusetts, Lucy in Texas, Connor in North Carolina, Keith in Alabama, Carson in Oklahoma, Vivian in California, and James in Massachusetts. Thank you all so very much for your support.
Indeed. Thank you very much.
Make sure you don't miss any episodes of the Prancing Pony Podcast. Subscribe now through Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, or your favorite podcast app.
And one last thing as always, don't forget to send your thoughts, comments, and, well, most of all, your fatherly advice for Denethor to Barlaman at theprancingponypodcast.com. You might as well also send him your Father of the Year mugs. He's going to need one. If you want your voice literally heard, well, just send us audio of your question. You can visit podinbox.com/prancingponypod and record your question for us.
Please be sure to still email the question to Barlaman. Even though Barlaman's been a lot more reliable lately, there's still a lot of mail to sort through. We'll try to get to you just as soon as we're able.
As always, this has been far too short a time to spend among such excellent and admirable listeners. But until next time.
This is the end. We are going. We are leaving now. Goodbye.